The summary of the Autobiography of Malcolm X. Malcolm's autobiography begins with a description of his pregnant mother Louise confronting an angry mob of Klansmen. Malcolm's family relocates to Michigan following his birth, but racist hatred continues to surround them. Earl Little, Malcolm's father, has an outspoken style of preaching, which, combined with his connection to Marcus Garvey, earns him the wrath of the local Black Legion, a splinter group of the Ku Klux Klan, and he is found dead one morning. Due to Earl's primary breadwinner status and the fact that the Great Depression is in full swing, the family quickly falls into poverty. Meanwhile, state officials relentlessly harass Louise about not being a good mother to her children and being crazy, until she finally succumbs to a mental breakdown. The children are dispersed among local families and have largely settled in. Malcolm, on the other hand, has been acting out, and is soon expelled from school and sent to a nearby youth detention center. There, he is the only Negro in his class, which elevates him to the status of a celebrity rather than a target of discrimination. He is an accomplished athlete, an excellent student, and a popular student. He was even elected class president. And yet, the adoration is always superficial, concealing a more entrenched racist mentality. Nothing exemplifies this more than Mr. Ostrowski, Malcolm's 8th grade teacher, who advises him against pursuing a career in law. Rather than that, as a Negro, he should set more modest goals, such as becoming a carpenter. Malcolm is able to see and feel the racial double standard for the first time. And after spending one summer in Boston with his half-sister Ella and immersing himself in the city's vibrant Black culture, he moves in with her immediately after graduating from 8th grade. Malcolm quickly becomes aware of the class hierarchy among African Americans living in Roxbury upon his arrival in Boston. Those who live on the Hill work as janitors and couriers in the white businesses downtown, while those who live in town are impoverished and involved in criminal economic activities such as gambling and prostitution. Malcolm is taken with the town's hustlers, and thanks to his new friend Shorty, he begins working a small hustle as a shoeshine boy. From there, he quickly becomes enmeshed in the hustler culture, embracing a life of drugs and alcohol, and the popular fashion of zoot suits and conks. Ella tries to emancipate Malcolm from this life by finding him work as a respectable soda fountain clerk, but this results in his greatest symbolic fall. Malcolm invites Laura, a well-educated Black girl, to a Duke Ellington concert for a night of Lindy hopping, a type of swing dance. While they enjoy themselves immensely, Malcolm abandons Laura at the sight of an attractive white woman, Sophia, who comes to symbolize his idolatry of white people as superior to Black people. Malcolm begins working as a dishwasher on railroads after moving in with Shorty, and is quickly promoted to selling sandwiches. Train rides to New York and Washington, D.C. expose him to the reality of Black people living in America's major cities, a situation fraught with poverty and crime. Malcolm, however, falls in love with Harlem's nightlife and, after being laid off from the railroad, takes a job at Small's Place, a posh Harlem bar and ballroom. He begins going by the moniker Red or Detroit Red. This completes his relocation to New York, where he begins to learn more about the Harlem hustles, particularly those involving the accommodation of white visitors from downtown Manhattan. Malcolm begins selling marijuana despite increased law enforcement attention, after being barred from Smalls for a minor criminal offense. Simultaneously, he is drafted, but his advanced slang and overall criminal appearance keep him out of the war. Malcolm transitions from burglary with Sammy the Pimp to gambling rings, underground mixed-race prostitution rings, and liquor bootlegging for a Jewish businessman named Himmy as police pressure mounts. However, the police and various criminal elements in Harlem continue to exert pressure. Shorty is finally compelled to travel from Boston to pick up Malcolm and rescue him from a potentially fatal situation. Malcolm returns to Boston with Shorty, their new contact Rudy, Sophia, and her sister, and begins organizing burglaries in upper-class white neighborhoods. Malcolm's enemies encircle him once more. Sophia's husband learns of their liaison, and the police investigate the burglar's ring. Finally, Malcolm is apprehended while attempting to repair a stolen watch, and the entire crew is arrested, except Rudy, who escapes. Malcolm and Shorty are disproportionately sentenced to 10 years in prison as Black men. The year is 1946 and Malcolm is currently incarcerated. His anti-God tirades and legendary rage earned him the moniker Satan. Malcolm becomes extremely interested in the new religious movement known as the Nation of Islam after receiving repeated letters and visits from several of his siblings. The Nation of Islam is a fusion of black nationalism and an adapted form of Islam, led by Elijah Muhammad, who preaches about the dignity of black people and the evils perpetrated against them by white men. Malcolm rediscovers his passion for learning and reading, which he believes complements his newly discovered faith. After 7 years of intensive study and debate with his fellow inmates, he emerges from prison as a devout Muslim who is completely committed to the nation's cause. Malcolm then relocates with his brother Wilfred to Detroit. He begins to learn more about the nation, its rituals of worship, and its revered leader while he is there. He attends a mass rally in Chicago, where Elijah addresses him specifically and then invites him to his home. Their relationship quickly develops into a close bond in which Malcolm regards Elijah as his father and Elijah regards Malcolm as a son. Malcolm is appointed a full-time minister of the nation after working several menial jobs and is assigned to establish temples in Boston, Philadelphia, and finally, New York. Malcolm encounters fierce competition in New York City among the numerous voices calling for racial justice. Nonetheless, the nation's message resonates with a large number of poor blacks, particularly evangelical Christians who are acutely aware of the prejudice they face. Despite reservations about Islam's strict moral code, one event in particular galvanizes Harlem's support for the nation. 2 nation brothers are attacked and arrested in Harlem by white police officers, prompting the mobilization of the nation's Fruit of Islam, the nation's militant force. These men form outside the police department until their brothers receive proper medical care, enhancing their local and national reputation as a force of resistance and black power. Malcolm develops an itch for the opportunity to defend his community as the nation attracts more negative attention. Mr. Muhammad eventually grants him permission, and Malcolm goes on a rhetorical rampage, denouncing more conservative black leaders as Uncle Toms and the media as prejudiced against the growing Muslim community. This national coverage develops into a period of rapid growth for the nation, which begins organizing massive Muslim rallies across the country. The more the movement grows, the more freedom Malcolm is granted to speak to the media, at universities, and at rallies. However, this increases the envy of other nation leaders. While Malcolm sees a growing struggle against the white supremacist structure that dominates the country's politics, his adversaries see a narcissistic leader bent on personal glory. Around 1963, Malcolm realizes that his idol, Elijah Muhammad, is not a godly figure, but merely a man with a sinful past. This severely undermines his faith, as the holiness of Mr. Muhammad was a central pillar of Malcolm's Muslim faith. He does, however, take steps to safeguard the nation's reputation. Regrettably, his efforts, coupled with some of his inflammatory remarks, are used to justify Malcolm's expulsion from the nation. Malcolm is now viewed as a threat to the nation. Fortunately, Cassius Clay takes him in and gives him the space he needs to plot his next move. Malcolm, a devout Muslim, decides that the time has come for him to embark on the Hajj, a traditional pilgrimage to Mecca for Muslims. Malcolm now travels to Mecca and meets a number of people, including Abd al-Rahman Azam, who take him in and show him great hospitality. While these Arab men appear to be white, they demonstrate a hospitality that transcends Malcolm's preconceived notions of race. This occurs repeatedly during the Hajj, a pilgrimage that emphasizes the brotherhood of all Muslims under Allah. These experiences begin to fundamentally alter Malcolm's perspective on race and racism, transforming them from biological facts to social conditions. Following the Hajj, he travels throughout Africa, meeting young student activists and politicians committed to Pan-Africanism, or solidarity among all peoples of African descent, and black nationalism. African Americans are no longer a lost people. According to Malcolm, they are now brothers of those Africans seeking liberation from colonialism. This experience of black unity throughout the world is exemplified by his meeting with Osagio Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, Ghana's leader, who discusses many of these concepts with Malcolm. Malcolm seeks to spread his newfound faith and ideology upon his return to America. Following his travels to the Middle East and Africa, he wishes to emphasize both the possibility of brotherhood across racial divides and the imperative of African diaspora unity as a means of global resistance to white supremacy. Regrettably, his more refined message places him in a position of no land. Man's he is excluded from the majority of African American civil rights movements because he is neither a militant nor a moderate. He attempts to found his own mosque, Muslim Mosque Incorporated, but struggles to gain support from Harlem's Muslim and non-Muslim communities. Malcolm is quite prepared to die violently after months of death threats and assassination attempts. He informs the reader of the imminent threat to his life in the hope that he has aided the cause of African Americans in some way. Beyond the final page, of course, is his assassination by 3 Nation of Islam members and the subsequent funeral, which was attended by thousands.
Hope we summarized it fully and you liked it. Please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so that we are motivated to create more videos.